Welcome to Career Tools. This week, responding to vague feedback. Chapter 1, change your attitude. The questions this cast answers are, what do I do if I'm told to change my attitude? What do I say if I'm told, change your attitude? And what is my attitude anyway?
Folks, Empty Disk is finally here. After years of struggling with our disk vendor, we have taken the time over the last couple of years and created our own instrument and tested it. And we've made it simpler, smarter, and cheaper too. It's simpler because we got rid of the numbers. The numbers were confusing. People didn't understand them. We answered all kinds of questions about them, and they weren't relevant, frankly. It's smarter because nearly 2/3 of your document is focused on recommendations for how you can behave differently to be more effective with people who are different than you, which was always the purpose of DISC, but most DISC training doesn't address it. Ours does, but nobody else does. And lastly, we made it cheaper. $30. The price increase we were going to have to pass on to you this year was going to raise it above $80. Now, Manager Tools will make less on each of our sales, but we don't care. We want you to benefit from DISC, and we're tired of people telling us, appropriately so in our opinion, that they can't afford it. So we lowered the price. We hope that'll make you try it, and let me know what you think.
We spend a lot of time telling Manager Tools managers that feedback is behavioral and specific. In other words, it has to be something you have seen someone do or seen them write or, heard them say. It has to be something that Mark sometimes says could be recorded on video, could be seen in video.
Yeah, the way that I like to tell groups is if everyone in here closed their eyes and you describe the behavior, would everyone see the same thing?
Perfect.
If not, then that's not behavior,
yes.
Right? There's more specificity needed there.
Exactly. So the feedback, change your attitude, or your attitude sucks, or any phrase with attitude in it, you've got a bad attitude, is not feedback because you can't close your eyes and know what that behavior is. You can't different people would describe it differently. It would contain different elements for different people. For some people, it's rolling their eyes. For other people, it's sighing, whatever.
Yeah. If I asked 30 people, close your eyes and picture someone with a bad attitude, everyone would picture something different.
Unfortunately, not all managers are Manager Tools managers. Not all of them are giving feedback in the way that we would ask them to. And so some of them will tell you, you've got a bad attitude, or change your attitude, or fix your attitude, or something like that. And so what do you do when they give you vague feedback like that and you don't know what the behaviors are that they want you to change? And that's what we're going to address today.
Yeah. Our outline for today, we have 4 points. First, what did you do to prompt this? Number 2 is get more information. Number 3 is stop negative behaviors. And lastly, look for another job.
Which sounds like a really drastic response to change your attitude, but we'll get to why that might not be such a drastic response
right
when we get there. It's not the solution for every time that you're given feedback. We'll go through the first 3 steps first, but if you don't get anywhere, then get to step 4. We don't want everybody to listen to this part and go, oh, well, I'm just going to move jobs. Oh, that's the answer.
Please listen all the way through before you just start looking for another job.
The end. Okay, so the first question is, what did you do to prompt this? And in this, we are assuming that you did something that prompts your manager to give you feedback, or feedback with a small f, not feedback in the Manager Tools model, about your attitude. Because it's unlikely that your boss just made this out of thin air. It is possible that they are in a bad mood and you did something that you've done 20,000 times before, and that is what they're calling attitude. It's also possible that you did something that just annoyed them today. It's also possible that you did something that you're not consciously aware of. So what we want to do is examine the situation first and see if we can work out what prompted this feedback from your manager. And if you assume that you didn't do anything, you will not find it. If you assume that you did do something, that will help your brain find evidence for a cause for the effect of your manager giving you feedback.
Yeah. Ideally, your manager is talking to you in terms of behavior, but we can't control your manager, right? You can't control your manager. All you can control is yourself. So you need to think in terms of behavior, and attitude is not a behavior. I mean, that's why we tell managers not to give feedback about attitude. But again, we can't control your managers. So we know what they mean by attitude. Certainly you can understand through just knowing and interacting with people, right?
Mhm.
Most of you are listening have had probably hundreds of thousands of interactions with people. You know what it feels like when someone has a bad attitude. So, here we can picture like, that huffy teenager rolling their eyes and arguing that it's not their turn, and stamping their feet when it's time to take out the trash, those types of things. We know that they have a bad attitude, but the adult version of that is maybe not as extreme and not as clear cut. But the key here is your boss still saw something. There was something that drew the attention of your boss. It stood out to them. And regardless of whether you think there's merit there or not, the fact that your boss noticed it means there's merit.
Yes, exactly. There's something you're doing that is putting in their head a negative, and that is going to weigh against all of the other things you do. So you might as well work out what it is and stop doing it, or do something about it, even whether or not you think it's valid. It's still affecting you and your relationship. So do something about it. So
Yeah.
we're going to give you a list of some things which might be included in attitude. So if you think back to, let's say it's lunchtime and your boss has just given you that feedback, and there's been several meetings that morning, you think back through those meetings and see if you can think of if any of these things or anything that's sort of adjacent to these things might have happened.
So these are ideas of what could have led to you getting told change your attitude, or that your attitude stinks, or something like that. These are actual behaviors that could have led to this.
Exactly. So not smiling, being argumentative or arguing against other people's ideas, staring at people. Sometimes that's, I was staring off into the distance and my mind was thinking about something else. But what people see on the outside is you staring, or you looking at someone for too long in a way that's not normal.
Well, and Wendy, just not to interrupt our flow here, but just so that everyone's clear, all of these behaviors, right? The fact that they're just behaviors doesn't mean that the impact of them is clear, that you have a bad attitude, right? I mean, you could have a boss that really wants you to challenge other people's positions, and so they could see being argumentative as a good thing. Right? There is still some subjectivity here, but not in the behavior, in the impact of the behavior and what the outcome is. Yeah. Sorry, I just want to make sure we know that.
You're right. Sometimes argumentative, and sometimes you're in a role where arguing against other people's ideas is required. Sometimes you have a boss who likes that atmosphere, and sometimes it's appropriate in some meetings and not in others. And that's where it can be difficult. Maybe it was fine to be argumentative in the meeting yesterday, but not in the one today. So, and that can be confusing because you're like, what? But I didn't get feedback yesterday. So sometimes it's situation appropriate. So keep that in mind. Okay.
Yeah.
Not using please and thank you. Heidi's. We don't do please and thank you, and we should. Always pointing out the negative and never the positive. So if somebody has an idea and you say, yeah, well, that won't work because A, B, and C, don't start that way. Start with, I love that idea, and I have some concerns about how we might implement A, B, and C.
Right.
Rolling your eyes, which I do without noticing.
A lot of people do it without noticing. Yeah.
Long emails describing how are you right. There's right and there's effective. And sometimes we like to tell people that they're wrong and we're right, and it's not effective, especially if it's your boss. using but instead of and. So if I say, I like your idea, but it's very different to I like your idea and I have some concerns.
Yep.
Saying whatever or okay, fine with an air of anger or resignation. So when you whatever or whatever.
Yeah.
None of those
Yeah.
are good things. I would avoid saying whatever. I don't think you can say whatever in the colloquial
hard to
way
say.
without.
It'd be hard to say whatever without coming across as yeah. I will also say that's why when we talk about behaviors, we don't just talk about the words, but also how you say them,
Mhm.
because there are, phrases like "I'll do it"
Mhm.
could be "I'll do it,"
Yeah.
or it could be "Well, I'll do it." Those are two
Exactly.
very
Completely different
tones, and
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Not helping other people, so not jumping in to help if somebody asks for it, or watching somebody walk past when they're carrying something and it looks difficult, or
just rejecting someone who asks for help, right?
Exactly.
Could be that
all of
overt.
this thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interrupting others, again, high D's, high I's. We interrupt
Like I just
each
did.
other, and we're okay with it because we interrupt other people, but not everybody is okay with you interrupting.
Yep.
Making comments which don't promote improvement or advancement. So things like someone makes a proposal and you say, oh, well, yeah, I guess we could do that. Instead of, I can see some merits in that. Or I think we could do that and whatever.
Something that furthers the conversation.
Exactly. Or sometimes it's someone sends something to you and you respond, but like when somebody sends you a meeting notice and you say, I can't do this time, but you don't suggest any other times.
Right.
That's
right.
attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Not putting in a full measure of effort. So, half baking something, just doing half of what you should have been doing, 3/4 of what you should have been, not doing something enthusiastically. And you cannot be at 100% all of the time, but you also know when you're just like going through the motions.
Sure, totally.
Being late and or unprepared. So those two are fairly obvious. Sighing, which is another thing that we do subconsciously or unconsciously, and without noticing. You have to train yourself to notice you doing it.
Yeah. I do think there are a few people who sigh purposefully as a passive-aggressive way of expressing their displeasure.
Yeah, I'm giving everybody a break because there's definitely times you do it on purpose, but there's also, I think, a lot of times when we do it and we just don't notice.
Yeah, I've had people sigh and then said, hey, it didn't seem like you liked that idea. And they were like, I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I didn't say, no, well, yeah, you didn't say anything.
Exactly. But your body language and that sigh.
But there was a sound that came out of you, and that's not good. Yeah.
Not compromising when that could move the situation forward. So sometimes there's there's a halfway place that doesn't matter to you, and it would allow everybody to move forward. If somebody says, I can meet at 10 and you really don't want to meet at 12, but they say, all right, well, what about 11? And you're like, oh, okay. You could stick to your guns and say, no, it has to be 12 for no good reason when you could compromise on 11.
Yeah.
Or speaking only when spoken to or when necessary, and not volunteering helpful information. I think of this in meetings when somebody's presenting something, this is how my part of the business, or this is how my tasks are going, and not saying, making, oh, great job, or well done, or you're doing great, or anything, and just waiting until you're spoken to, saying the minimum number of words, and then not speaking again can be seen as sulking or attitude.
Absolutely. So the key here is to think of this list, right? And review the last few interactions that you had with your boss. Did you exhibit anything resembling the list that we just went through, right? Or that could certainly be a cause for why your boss, had that conversation about your attitude. But there's an important point here too. You got to be careful because we all justify our own behaviors, right? We do things for a reason. No one's actively trying to engage in, bad or poor behaviors that would lead to their boss saying that they have a bad attitude. But we rationalize things and we judge ourselves based on our intentions and our motivations. We judge other people based on their behaviors and what we see, right? So you might agree that you were quieter in the meeting than normal, or that the two things that you did say were negative. You might agree that you probably didn't smile, but you would say it's nothing to do with your attitude. That's what you would tell yourself. You would say it's the fact that those ideas were stupid. And so why would I say anything, right? Or you didn't feel like you had something to contribute, or you had more important work that you could be doing, and that's what was on your mind. Or you were up all night with a sick child and you're tired. Right? That's a completely reasonable thing.
Remember, the people on the outside can't see what's going on in the inside of your head.
Exactly. Yep. So again, we judge others by their actions and we judge ourselves by our intentions. And our intention in this situation wasn't to be difficult, so we should be forgiven. On the other hand, when others act, we draw conclusions, and that's what your boss is doing. Right? Your boss doesn't know all the internal things or, all of your, all the things that went in or was behind your behavior. So if your boss thinks that you're argumentative, she saw behaviors that led her to that conclusion. She's not wrong, even if you think the conclusion that she drew is incorrect.
So in order to know what your boss is talking about, you have to shut off the reasoning, justifying part of your brain and see the behaviors as other people do. So your boss and the other people in the meeting are judging you based on what you did. And clearly that somehow adds up to attitude or a bad attitude in the mind of your boss. So don't jump to justifications. Try and review your behavior dispassionately. And then can you see what might have prompted the comment?
Absolutely. And if you immediately know what they're talking about, then apologize. Don't defend yourself. Apologizing and defending yourself are not the same thing, right? And so I'm sorry I seemed argumentative this morning. My kid was up all night. But instead, you're right. I was argumentative this morning. I will apologize to Steve personally. I'm sorry that I made the meeting more difficult for you than it needed to be, and I will be more careful with my words in the future.
It's really hard to move from justifying to apologizing.
Yes.
I think we all naturally do that. I'm sorry I seemed this way to you, or I'm sorry and here's my reasons, rather than just saying sorry and acknowledging that you made something harder for somebody else.
Folks, one more thing about Empty Disk. We now control our instrument. And because of that, two things are going to happen. First of all, we're going to keep the price low. $30 is not an introductory price. We don't have any intention of raising the price. We want you to benefit from it. But it also allows us to share with you an awful lot of data. And as we get more thousands of people taking it, we'll share that data and share all kinds of background about types of behavioral profiles and how they map out geographically against various other criteria. And as well, we intend to use Empty Disk as a way to bring new people into our community. We intend to make it attractive by its price, and then people will come in, get a better disk instrument, and then discover that Maneater tools exist. Many of those people may not be podcast listeners. It's a way for us to continue to grow, and when we grow, we have more resources to help you succeed, and that's why we're here.
So if you can't think of anything, then we're going to need to get some more information. So you might ask a trusted friend what they think your boss might be calling attitude, but you need to be specific. So you need to say, what did you see or hear that might have prompted him to say that I have a bad attitude? Because if you ask your friend, do I have a bad attitude? Your friend will say no, because one, you're not describing what it is. And two, they're your friend. They're not going to tell you're a terrible person.
And I think the important point here is this is not about your boss. This is about you, right? And so we all have, coworkers that we know and trust and love, and they're going to their gut reaction is to get our back, right?
Mhm.
And they're going to say, no, he's just a jerk. No, that's not what this is about. This
and
isn't
it's not
about,
helpful to you.
and it's not helpful. Exactly. The point here is not about, them. I would even say if you could phrase it in a way that doesn't even reference the fact that they said you have a bad attitude. If you just, instead of saying, what did you see or hear that prompted him to say I have a bad attitude, you could say, what did you notice that could lead someone to think I had a bad attitude in that meeting?
Yeah.
Right? So that it's not about that person. Now, they may say, who said you had a bad attitude? And then you could choose to share or choose to say, that's the feeling I got. That's kind of what I'm gathering. And I just want to know if there was anything that I did that could have been construed that way.
And if you have several friends to choose from, choose the one that has known your boss the longest. So what you don't want to do is conduct a survey. You don't ask everybody who was in the meeting because it's just blowing it all out of proportion. But if you choose one person you trust who knows your boss well and you ask that person, then they have a better understanding of what your boss might be calling attitude because they've known him longer. They know what his pet peeves are, or
totally.
They know, my boss hates it when X, and they're, oh, you were doing X, and that's his thing, right?
Right.
If they tell you what behavior they saw, don't try and justify it because you won't fix your problem, and your friend will not honestly tell you what they saw again. If Andrew says to me, oh, Wendy, I saw you rolling your eyes 20 times in that meeting, and I say, yeah, but all the ideas were stupid, then
right.
Andrew's going to be, the next time I say, hey, I got told I had a bad attitude, what did you see? He's going to go, oh, I didn't see anything. Because, no, I just justified it.
Why would I?
Yeah, exactly. I just cut him off and didn't use what he was giving me. So don't justify. Try and review it dispassionately. And it's hard because nobody likes to be told that they're not perfect.
Yeah. Especially if you had pure intentions or you had pure motivations and just the outcome didn't reflect that or whatnot. The advantage of asking someone who knows your boss for a long time is they have data, right? They have a baseline of their behavior, of the boss's behaviors. So they'll know that people on mute on conference calls is a huge pet peeve, right? So all you have to do is apologize and not do it again, and you'll be right.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. They will know, for example, that your boss seems to be going through something right now and is less reasonable than usual, or maybe has a shorter temper than usual, right? So you might want to limit your conversations or behaviors to professional and not, try to bring up personal stuff or
jokes.
Outside of work stuff. Yes. Yeah, jokes. Yeah, jokes are dangerous. They will know, for example, that, your boss had a knockdown, drag out fight with someone else in the organization right before that meeting and is in a terrible mood. And that certainly would affect how they perceive things, just like anyone. All of these could be reasons why your boss is particularly sensitive today or particularly on the lookout for, things. And so having your friend put forward these reasons stops you preemptively from using those as justification or your defense, right? It might not be you. It might be just your boss, but you can't decide that. It's too easy to convince yourself or fool yourself. If your friend doesn't say, it's not you, it's him, then it's you.
Yeah, if they don't say it's him, it's you.
Right,
and
exactly.
You can ask your boss, and there's a right way to do this. So don't start by defending yourself again.
No.
Instead, show willingness to receive and accept feedback. So what you want to do is make this a pleasurable, or at least a not negative interaction for your boss. So your boss says to you, you had a terrible attitude in that meeting. What's the matter with you? Then the answer is, thank you, with a smile. I appreciate you telling me that. I appreciate you telling me that's what you saw. I don't want people to think that I have a bad attitude. Can you tell me specifically, was there something I did or said that really came off that way so that I make sure I'm not going to do those again?
Yeah.
It's about being willing to hear it and then being willing to change. If you say those words, you're almost saying to your boss, I am not going to defend myself. I'm going to accept whatever you say so you can be truthful. And you want him to be truthful because if you did something or even if you didn't do something and they perceived that you did, it's going to happen again if you don't know what that thing is.
Right. Yeah. So our next point is stop negative behaviors. So whatever it is that your boss considers having a bad attitude, stop that. None of those behaviors are an indelible part of your personality. You can smile if you want to. You can say and not but if you want to. You can start with a positive when reacting to someone's idea. You can say the words please and the words thank you. You can stop interrupting others if you want to. It's not easy, but that doesn't mean it's impossible, right? It's just behavior.
Exactly. If you think back over the last 20 years, it's become unacceptable to use certain words to describe certain people or certain groups of people. There were words that 20 years ago were absolutely fine and now are not. And we have learned not to say those words. The first few times, probably we went to say them and then thought, oh, I'm not supposed to say that anymore. And then there's a few times where you go to say it and there's this stumble because you're like, oh, I'm supposed to use that other word. And then all of a sudden, it's natural to use whatever term we've changed to. And if you hear someone say the old word, it's shocking. I remember coming to the US and the first time I heard someone say handicapped, I was literally in my body shocked because that's not a word that is acceptable in the UK. And I was like, oh, I can't believe you said that word out loud. So we can learn to say a different word. If we can learn that, we can learn to not do different behaviors or to do different behavior. You know, we can learn to smile if we can learn to change the word we use. Somebody once said to me, if you can learn a bad habit, you can learn a good one.
Absolutely.
And we all learn bad habits.
Yeah. And often the solution is pretty simple.
I had this boss, it was really silly. I had this boss who, if you came to the meeting with like a standard notepad that you got out of the stationery cupboard, the one that was provided by the company, if you came to a meeting with that notebook, she took offense because in her mind, you were accepting the lowest possible standard. You were just taking the free thing and that was enough for you. So all you had to do was go to the store, buy a notebook for like $1.99 and come to the meeting with that. And all of a sudden, she thought you had a better attitude. Now, I'm not saying that. I was going to use the word irrational. That's probably unfair on her. It was just one of her things. And maybe she had a direct at one stage who did have a bad attitude or wasn't a great direct and, you know, always used the stationary notebook.
Yeah. And she linked those things together.
Yeah, she put those two things together in her brain. And hopefully your bosses, you know, don't have weird quirks like that. And the solution for you is something that you think is more rational. But if it's not, whatever, like $1.99 and problem solved.
And that's the thing is, I mean, you could think of it as through the negative lens, which is, yeah, if you just bring the free stationery or free notepad, then you're going to be, she may look at you and not like that or whatever. But I think of it as through the positive lens. It's like, oh, if there's something that simple that would go, just give me, I'm not saying, score me huge points, but just make it so I don't, stick out as a negative to her. Mm-hmm. I want to know that. I mean, That's great.
Yeah.
That's easy, right?
Much easier than learning to smile when you don't do it naturally. Yeah. And this is an example of a strategy you can use. I learned what to do because I watched all the other people in the meeting and looked to see who she was happy with. And the answer was, well, people with nice notebooks. Was weird. But if there's somebody in your team that your boss holds up as having a good attitude or someone that always seems to have positive points as opposed to your negative points, then watch that person and think about what are they doing that's different to what you're doing. And maybe it's just that will tell you what it is that's the difference, that's making the difference and getting your boss to give you that bad attitude label.
Maybe they're at the meeting 5 minutes early every time.
Yeah.
Instead of showing up at the time the meeting starts. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It could be that simple. Yeah. So our last point is look for another job. And if you can't think of anything that, your boss may have described as a bad attitude, your friend can't think of anything, your boss doesn't have any examples to share with you, your boss may be using that phrase to describe a fundamental disconnect between the two of you. And rather than saying, I just don't like you, or I just don't like working with you, your boss considers this them giving you, quote, feedback, right? In that case, we offer that you should prepare for a search, save money, warm up your network, and update your resume.
Yeah, which is not to say that you shouldn't continue to invest in your relationship with him or her and not try to stop doing all of the things they consider negative and do more of the things they consider positive. You want to do two things at the same time. The first is continue to work on that relationship and trying to improve it. And at the same time, accept that it may be that there is a fundamental disconnect and you might be better off in another job.
Right. Absolutely.
And having a backup plan is, always smart.
That's right.
So fixing a bad attitude is easy. Just stop doing those behaviors. And the hard part is establishing what they are and stopping doing them. But we believe in you. You can do it.
We trust you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Wendy. Bye, everyone.
That's all for this week. We'll be back next week with a new topic.